I wasted $15,000 on a Joe Dispenza workshop and got absolutely nothing. 3 years of meditation, mental rehearsals, and following his methods, I was still broke. The problem wasn't Dr. Joe's work, don't get me wrong. It was how I was approaching it. And when I was at my lowest point, which was 6 figures worth of debt, about to lose everything, I discovered this one simple neurological principle that changed everything. And within 21 days, I manifested $30,000. And it wasn't through mental rehearsals or meditation marathons. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how I simplified his complex approach into a 5-minute practice that actually works, including the exact heart coherence technique that collapsed the time between me and my financial freedom. Now, if you're thinking, look, here we go. Here's another guy with their magical thinking. I want you to just hang with me, because what I'm about to share isn't about being high vibe or spiritual bypassing your problems. I used to do that. But this is about the neuroscience of frequency that nobody else is talking about. But before we begin, if you want to go deeper with this work, I've created a free training that expands on everything that I'm about to share today. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below. So first, I want to take you back to where this all started. It was 3 years ago, and I was that person who discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I thought, wow, heck yeah. This is the holy grail of manifestation. I mean, the man combines science and spirituality. What's not to love about him? Now, I'm going to say this again. The problem wasn't Dr. Joe's work, okay? I love Dr. Joe. The problem was me approaching it. I was approaching it like a desperate ex sliding into DMs at 2 a.m. in the morning. So I did what any desperate, broke person would do. I maxed out my credit card to attend one of his live workshops, his 7-day retreats. Because nothing says I'm financially responsible like spending money you don't have on a spiritual retreat, right? And man, I meditated for hours. I visualized, mentally rehearsed until my third eye needed glasses. I did the breath, right? I was doing the breath until I was practically hyperventilating in my living room. And my roommate, he thought I was having some kind of episode, but he wasn't entirely wrong. I had the morning routine that would even make the most disciplined monk say, bro, can you take it easy? Can you take a day off? I was doing his walking meditations, the sitting meditations, laying down meditations. If Dr. Joe told me to meditate hanging upside down like a bat, I probably would have done it. I was his biggest fanboy. But here's what was happening, right? While I was trying to raise my frequency in meditation, I would step back into my real life and immediately crash back into survival mode. Why wouldn't I? Because I had bills piling up. I had debt collectors calling me up. They were calling me so much that I thought that they were trying to date me. But that familiar feeling of your stomach dropping when you check your bank account and you only see a single digit, sometimes it was in the negative, staring back at you. That's how I felt. And the worst part was I was blaming myself, right? I'm not doing it right. I'm not spiritual enough. My vibration isn't high enough. But here's what nobody tells you about Joe's work. It's not designed for people in survival mode. When you're worried about keeping the lights on, then sitting down for a 3-hour-long meditation, that it feels like watching a cooking show while you're starving. And then came my rock bottom moment. I was in 6 figures worth of debt, about to lose my apartment, about to go default on my mortgage. And I remember sitting surrounded by overdue letters thinking, man, this spiritual stuff is bullshit. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't that Joe's methods didn't work, okay? I was approaching them from a place of desperation. Because you cannot have what you need. Because the moment you need something, you are creating importance. And importance creates separation in the quantum field. And I know this sounds like some shit you'd hear at Burning Man by some guy named Stardust. But you gotta stay with me. So I asked this one simple question. What if I could simply or simplify everything down to one neurological principle that would work even though I was in survival mode or stressed out of my mind. Because there's got to be a way, right? There are people in Dr. Joe's work who have terminal diseases, stage 4 cancer, and I guarantee that they are in survival. So what was missing? So I went back to the science behind Dr. Joe's work, not the meditations, but the actual neurological mechanisms that make manifestation work. And then I discovered something interesting. The key wasn't to spend hours in meditation. It wasn't to mentally rehearse or visualize until your brain hurt. It was about creating a specific neurological state that could be achieved in minutes, not hours. What am I talking about? Well, think about it like this. When you're trying to tune a radio to a specific station, you don't need to understand how radio waves work or spend hours turning the dial. You just need to find the right frequency and lock in. That's it. And that's exactly what I did. I stripped away all the complexity and focused on one thing. Heart coherence combined with a specific identity shift. Now, before I break this down, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about rejecting Dr. Joe's work. It's about distilling it down to its most powerful essence, so it works for real people with real problems, for people who are in survival mode. So here's what I discovered. The most powerful part of Joe's meditation isn't the mental rehearsal, the visualization, or even the meditation itself. It's the neurological state you enter when your heart and brain are in coherence while simultaneously holding a new identity. Whew. That was an eye-opener. Because most of the people that do Joe's work get it completely wrong. They try to visualize what they want while their nervous system is screaming, danger, danger. It's like trying to tune a radio station while someone is literally jamming the signal. Okay, I want you to write this down because this is the simplified 5-minute practice that I developed. Now, disclaimer, I do this before I do one of his long meditations, okay? Step 1 is heart coherence activation. Instead of trying to meditate for an hour or doing one of his long meditations, I prepare myself. I focus on getting my heart into coherence quickly. How? Well, through simple breathing patterns like 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. That's it, all while placing my awareness on the heart center. He does this in some meditations, but I don't think it's long enough, especially if you're like deep into survival mode. Because the key here, and what most people miss, is you're not trying to feel positive emotions yet. You're just regulating your nervous system. Because when you are in survival mode, trying to force a positive emotion is like trying to smile while I'm stepping on your foot, right? It just creates more internal conflict. That is step number 1. Step number 2 is called the identity shift. Now, once my heart was in coherence, I did something radical. Instead of visualizing what I wanted to have, I focused on who I needed to be. Okay? This is where most people get manifestation completely wrong. They focus on the external outcome, the money, the relationship, the job. Instead of the identity shift required to attract those things. So then I asked myself, who would I be if I already had financial freedom? If I was already out of debt? If I had more than enough? Who would I be? How would I think? How would I make decisions from that place? How would I feel about money? Here's the most important one. How do I think? What do I think about myself? Okay? Because I guarantee you, that version of me does not feel sorry for themselves, does not give themselves a pity party. And I simply stepped into that identity. I didn't pretend, I didn't fake it. I literally became that version of myself for those minutes. Now, step 3 is the frequency lock. This is the final step, and this is where you cement the new identity into your nervous system. And most people skip this step. I knew I skipped this step a lot, which is why their manifestations don't stick. They feel great during meditation, then immediately go back into their old identity the moment life happens, the moment they check their phone. Our phone is one of the biggest triggers to stepping back into our old identity. And so, to lock in this frequency, I used a simple technique. I imagined making decisions as that new version of me. Not big dramatic decisions, but small everyday choices, right? How would this financially free version of me order at a restaurant? How would they be with clients? How are they during sales calls? How are they when they interact with their loved ones? How do they talk to their friends, right? By rehearsing these small decisions, I was literally rewiring my neural pathways to this new default identity, even when I wasn't conscious about thinking about it. Now, this entire process just takes 5 minutes, not hours, not even half an hour, 5 minutes. And like I suggest doing this before you even do one of his long meditations. It is the ultimate preparation for his meditations. Now, you might be thinking, there is no way a 5-minute practice manifested $30,000 in 21 days. And you are right to be skeptical, my friend, because I was too. But here's exactly what happened, right? I committed to this practice twice daily, once in the morning, once before bed. No matter how stressed I was, no matter how dire my financial situation looked, I stuck to these 5 minutes before that 45-minute meditation. For the first week, nothing happened externally that changed. My bills were still piling up, my bank account was still on life support, but something internal was shifting. I noticed I wasn't panicking about money anymore. I wasn't making decisions from a place of desperation, scarcity. And by the second week, I started noticing something strange. Opportunities I would have previously dismissed started appearing. I remember a old client of mine reached out about a project, and then an acquaintance mentioned that they needed help with something which I had the perfect skills for. But here's the most important part, and this is where most people completely miss the magic of manifestation. The $30,000 didn't appear as a random check in the mail or a lottery winning. It came through me making different decisions as this new identity. Here's what happened, right? I found myself confidently pitching my services at rates I would have previously thought were impossible. I found myself having conversations about money without that knot in the anxiety in my stomach. And here's the most important part. I found myself taking actions that the old me would have been too afraid to take, or I would have just procrastinated or just dismissed altogether. Now, by day 21, I had locked in 6 new clients at $5,000 each, $30,000 in total. Money that came because I shifted my identity to someone who could receive it. Now, was it the 5-minute practice alone? Of course not. I still had to take action. I still had to do the work. But the actions I took came from a completely different place. They came from my new identity, not my old one, right? My old identity would have just felt sorry for himself, have a pity party for himself, right? But my new identity, wow. And I wish I could tell you that this 30K came in a magical way, but it came in a way that felt natural and felt aligned with the universe. Because I was in the frequency where this was normal for me. And that made all the difference. Now, I want to talk about why this works on a neurological level. Because I'm not just throwing some spiritual concepts at you without backing them up. When you are in survival mode, your brain is in high beta brainwaves. You are scanning for problems. Your heart is beating out of coherence, and you're producing stress chemicals like cortisol, and that keep us anchored to our past. That heart coherence technique that I shared literally shifts your brainwaves from high beta to alpha and into theta, sometimes even to delta and gamma. The same brainwave state that you'd eventually reach in a long meditation, but in a fraction of a time. Because when your heart and brain are in coherence, something amazing happens. You move from living by the hormones of stress into living by the hormones of creations. And this is pure neuroscience. Your body doesn't know the difference between an actual experience and one that you're creating by thought alone. Now, we have been misled to believe that our imagination is childish and childlike. But you need to understand, whatever you're experiencing within is just as real as what is happening in the 3D. However, when you are thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, and feeling the same emotions, you are conditioning your body to remain in the past. But when you begin to think, act, feel, and behave in new ways, even just for 5 minutes, you are literally rewiring your brain and reconditioning your body to a new mind. And by the way, this is what Dr. Joe's book, You Are the Placebo, is all about. Anything can be a placebo, including a 5-minute practice, if it creates a neurological conditions for change, right? Anything can be a placebo. Now, I need to be honest with something. When you start doing this practice, you're going to face resistance. And it's just not a little bit. I'm talking about a full-on internal rebellion. Your body, which has become the mind of your past emotions, it's going to fight you. It's not going to go down easily. It's going to crave those familiar feelings of stress, worry, and anxiety that we've actually been memorizing. Because how long have you been in that stressful state? It's going to send you thoughts like, this is stupid, this is not working. You have real problems to solve. And you have to remember this. You have to remember that this is where most people quit. But you need to remember also that those thoughts aren't yours. They are the old programming trying to maintain control. And man, I experienced this every single day, especially in the first week. My mind would come up with incredibly convincing reasons why I needed to skip this practice just for today. You know what I mean? Remember all your problems? Come on, you don't have time to be sitting down. All the reasons why I couldn't possibly waste 5 minutes on this manifestation nonsense. It just came up. But here's what I realized. The more resistance you feel, the more you need to do this practice. Crazy. The resistance itself is a sign that you are pushing against your old neural pathways and creating new ones. So if you try this and feel like your mind is fighting you every step of the way, I just want to say congratulations. You are doing it correctly. Because that resistance is the sound of your old identity dying and your new one being born. So there you have it. That is how I simplified Joe Dispenza's method into a 5-minute practice and manifested $30,000 in 21 days. And this isn't magical thinking or ignoring your problems. I was ignoring my problems for a very long time. But it's about creating a neurological state where solutions can emerge and where you can take action from a completely different identity. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not promising you'll manifest exactly $30,000 in exactly 21 days because your journey is unique to you and will be unique to you. But what I can promise is that if you commit to this practice, you will experience a fundamental shift in how you relate to your challenges. And that shift is what creates the space for miracles to happen. And if you found this video helpful or valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe, and share this to someone that may need to hear this message as well. Because this is content that bridges the gap between spirituality, science, and practical results. And if you do want to go deeper with this work, then I've created a free training below that expands on everything that I've shared today. Link is in the description. And all you have to do is remember, you don't need to spend thousands on Dr. Joe workshops or meditate for hours to change your reality. You just need to understand that one neurological principle that makes everything else work.